Good evening. Welcome to this edition of World Today, a brand new show on DD India, which will be from here on your window, your daily window to the world. And on the show tonight, we're going to get you a quick perspective on India-Afghanistan, further consolidating their ties with signing of very critical MOUs today, leveraging massive infrastructure push on Afghan soil. On World Today, we also get you the findings of the team of investigators of World Health Organization currently stationed in Wuhan and more. We will also be talking about the larger optics of Biden-Modi teleconversation, which has certainly gone beyond usual courtesies and pleasantries. All that and much more on World Today. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and here are the headlines. India and Afghanistan ties are at a new high. Both sign an agreement on building of Shatut Dam in Afghanistan via video conferencing. This is the second major dam being built by India in Afghanistan. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds telephonic conversation with Joseph R. Biden, President of United States of America. Warmly congratulates him, conveys best wishes for his tenure, looks forward to working closely with him to further elevate India-US strategic partnership. World battles COVID-19. Over 10 crore 70 lakh people affected worldwide. Over 7 crore 89 lakh recoveries recorded so far. Fatalities from COVID-19 globally stand about 23 lakh 38,000. Team of investigators from World Health Organization briefs in Wuhan. Ben Mbarak says team did not find evidence of large outbreaks that could be related to COVID-19 prior to December 2019. Also says found evidence of wider circulation outside the Wuhan Hunan market. In other news on World Today, Hong Kong's top court denies bail to media tycoon and Beijing critic Jimmy Lai. He's the most high-profile person to be charged under the city's national security law. And on World Today, let's begin with the big news. Well, India and Afghanistan today signed an agreement on building of Shatut Dam in Afghanistan. Now, this agreement was signed between the two countries in presence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani through video conferencing. Now, the dam is proposed to be constructed on the Kabul River Basin, which is one of the 5 river basins of Afghanistan. Speaking on the occasion, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed happiness that Shatut Dam will not only provide clean drinking water to 2 million citizens of Kabul, but also be used for irrigation.
India and Afghanistan ties are at a new high. The bonding between the two countries has been further strengthened after signing of a new MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding for the construction of Lalandar Dam in Afghanistan took place on 9 February by External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar and Foreign Minister Mr. Hanif Atmar in the presence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President of Afghanistan, Dr. Mohammad Ashraf Ghani. The dam is proposed to be constructed on the Kabul River Basin, which is one of the 5 river basins of Afghanistan. Speaking on the occasion, Prime Minister Modi expressed happiness that Shatut Dam will not only provide clean drinking water to 2 million citizens of Kabul, but also be used for irrigation.
हमारे लिए अफगानिस्तान की आवश्यकताएं हमेशा महत्वपूर्ण रही है और रहेगी। इसलिए मैं ये कह सकता हूं कि आज हम काबुल में जिस शहतूत बांध के निर्माण पर समझौता कर रहे हैं, उसकी नींव सिर्फ ईंटों और मोर्टार पर नहीं बनेगी, बल्कि भारत अफगान दोस्ती की ताकत पर टिकी होगी। काबुल शहर भारत के लोगों के दिलो दिमाग में बसा है। कई पीढ़ियां, जैसे आपने उल्लेख किया, गुरुदेव रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर की काबुली वाला कहानी पढ़कर बड़ी हुई है।
Prime Minister Modi said India has pledged to rebuild Afghanistan, committing to $80 million worth of projects. He said these projects will help strengthen the bilateral relations between the two nations.
ट्रांसमिशन लाइन के निर्माण से काबुल शहर में बिजली की आपूर्ति बेहतर हुई। 218 किलोमीटर लंबे डेलाराम खरंज राजमार्ग ने अफगानिस्तान के लिए कनेक्टिविटी का एक विकल्प प्रदान किया। कुछ वर्ष पहले बने मैत्री बांध से हेरात में बिजली और सिंचाई का सिस्टम सुदृढ़ हुआ। अफगानिस्तान के संसद का निर्माण भारत और अफगानिस्तान की जनता का डेमोक्रेसी के प्रति लगाव का महत्वपूर्ण प्रतीक रहा। इन सभी प्रोजेक्ट का एक प्रमुख पहलू यह रहा कि इनसे भारत और अफगानिस्तान की दोस्ती, हमारी अपने आपसी साझेदारी और मजबूत हुई।
Prime Minister also expressed concern over violence in Afghanistan.
अफगानिस्तान में बढ़ रही हिंसा से हम चिंतित हैं। निर्दोष नागरिकों, पत्रकारों और कार्यकर्ताओं को कायरतापूर्ण ढंग से निशाना बनाया जा रहा है। हमने हिंसा को तत्काल समाप्त करने का आह्वान किया है और हम फौरन एक व्यापक संघर्ष विराम का समर्थन करते हैं।
Thanking India for providing COVID-19 vaccine, Afghanistan President said the vaccines are a greater gift from India in such a critical time.
Your decision to provide us with 500,000 doses of the vaccine at this critical time when Indians themselves are looking for every single vaccine could not be a greater gift. These doses will be administered to our frontline health workers, our heroic security forces, and vulnerable people. We cherish this act of exceptional generosity.
The project is part of new development partnership between India and Afghanistan. This is the second major dam being built by India in Afghanistan after India-Afghanistan Friendship Dam, which was inaugurated by the Prime Minister and President in June 2016. Bureau Report, DD India.
So India has played a significant role in the reconstruction and rehabilitation process in Afghanistan. India's extensive developmental assistance, various programs which now stand at around $2 billion is a strong signal of its abiding commitment to Afghanistan's peace, stability and prosperity. And in fact, Government of India has also taken on a number of medium and large infrastructure projects in its assistance program in Afghanistan. And on World Today, we get you a detailed explainer on Indian assistance and some of the ongoing as well as completed Indian projects in Afghanistan. Now let's take a look. We'll be talking about India-Afghanistan Friends Forever, and first under the header Massive Infrastructure Push. Construction of 218-kilometer road from Zaranj to Delaram, which facilitates the movement of goods and services to Iranian border, is underway. There is also an upgradation of telephone exchanges at least in 11 provinces in Afghanistan. That's also being undertaken. We're also looking at a massive expansion of national TV network. This is done by providing uplink and downlinking facilities. Now this is spread over 34 provinces, and also 34 assistance for construction of executive block in the new Afghanistan Parliament building is also provided by India. India-Afghan Friendship Dam, that is the Salma Dam there, that is also one of the testimonies of India-Afghanistan warming of ties, plus Doshi and Charikar substations are also being developed. Let's move on and talk a little more about the infrastructure push. We're also looking at an establishment of the new diagnostic center as well as the establishment of decentralized wastewater treatment done with the help of India there. Also establishment of Afghan National Agriculture Science and Technology University in sensitive Kandahar. There is also a massive contribution of $1 million annually. This is going to be spread over the next 5 years, and this is going to go to the development of Afghan Red Crescent Society. There's also in place grant in aid to the tune of $1 million to Habiba High School. This is also being spread over to the next 10 years. 1 decade India is going to, provide financial aid in that project. Now let's also talk about the road connectivity to Bande-Amir in Bamia province. Very, very important in terms of connectivity. Plus India assisting in promoting low-cost housing for those Afghan refugees that are returning back in Nangarhar region of Afghanistan. Also to talk about 116 high-capacity community development projects spread over 34 provinces in Afghanistan. Well, that was a quick one on the infrastructure push. Now let's move on and talk about the humanitarian push as far as Indian side is concerned. Massive food assistance of 11 lakh tons of wheat and 1.5 million school to 1.5 million school children, and the numbers will always go up from here. India is also committed to in terms of promoting food security, especially during calamities in Afghanistan, which also includes your medical diagnostic center in Kabul, which was set up way back in 2015 under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And after humanitarian push, let's talk more about the human resource development and capacity building push by India, wherein at least 3,500 Afghan nationals are already, as we speak, undergoing training, education in various fields, basically vocational training every year. Plus, Afghanistan students are also pursuing education in India on self-financial basis as well. There's also a trained manpower for a larger pool of public and private sectors in Afghanistan. But remember, this is being trained in India. And how does this happen? There are also in place at least special 1,000 scholarships. These are special scholarships, at least 1,000 in them per annum, 1,000 scholarship per annum for Afghan nationals living in various parts of the country, plus 1,000 Indian technical and economic cooperation slotted to Afghanistan nationals as well. And plus Afghanistan National Agricultural Science and Technology University, which was also established with India's assistance there. India-Afghanistan Agricultural Fellowship Program is also one of the popular cornerstones when we talk about the relationship, especially in the HRD and capacity building space. At least 50 Afghan nationals are completing their education, graduation in Indian School of Mines in Dhanbad. Well, that was a quick roundup of as far as India's assistance in various developmental projects in Afghanistan is concerned in terms of massive infrastructure push. But remember, this has gone beyond infrastructure. India is also, in fact, assisting Afghanistan in HRD capacity building as well as humanitarian causes as well. And to talk about more the new template when it comes to India-Afghanistan ties, we are joined by Ambassador Gautam Mukhopadhyay, former Indian ambassador to Afghanistan. Ambassador Mukhopadhyay, thank you so much, sir, for joining us on this edition of World Today. Well, taking a cue from the critical MOU on the Shatu Dam that was signed today, Ambassador Mukhopadhyay, let's talk a bit more about it, especially the kind of reactions that we saw coming from our Prime Minister and their President. Overwhelming, warming of ties, but wherever it is about Afghanistan, there's always that special Indian touch.
Yes, thank you. This is a really very significant project because, like the Pule-Khumri Kabul electricity line that was inaugurated sometime in I think 2002, this is something that directly sort of benefits and serves the people of in Kabul in this case particularly. And drinking water is obviously a very basic necessity in any township. And this is coming, of course, on top of a number of other projects that both the Prime Minister and you have listed. There is the Salma Dam, there's the Zaranj Delaram road, which connects to Chabahar port eventually. And there is the Parliament building that has been constructed. So all these things put together amount to both a very significant development push and a very significant development push that is directed towards the people of Afghanistan, directly benefiting the people of Afghanistan. And that has been the kind of policy that we have followed for Afghanistan since the beginning, how to mitigate the damage inflicted on Afghanistan over 20 or more years of intervention, foreign intervention, invasion, and civil wars, and as the Prime Minister very sharply emphasized, really build on the strong India-Afghan friendly sentiments that have existed historically and that have been reinforced in the post-2001 period.
In terms of Afghanistan's strategic location, the strategic importance, you know what I'm trying to ask, vis-a-vis security concerns in the world has actually changed post-COVID. But before even that, we are on a common page when it comes to combating terror, considering our immediate neighbors. How do you look at the ties in the current context of global order?
Well, one has to see, I think, both dimensions, historical dimension. The fact is that Afghanistan has been very much part of India's outreach towards Central Asia as well as towards West Asia, Iran, and much further beyond. And that has been actually obstructed by hard frontiers since partition and since our independence by the creation of Pakistan. So we have really not had free movement towards West Asia, which has always been part of our Central Asia and West Asia, which has always been part of our history. But in the sort of post, 70s period, starting with instability in Afghanistan, obviously, because of, fundamentalist and extremist elements radiating out of Pakistan, there has been a great deal of radicalization in Afghanistan and Central Asia. And this has led to, what happened in 9/11. It became a center for safe haven for the Al-Qaeda. And since then, it has been a safe haven for a number of other terrorist and extremist outfits, both from Central Asia, from Pakistan, some of them also directed towards India. So
Correct.
India has been always to have a friendly Afghanistan in order to ensure and safeguard its security. And I think that has been a major concern in developing India's relations with Afghanistan. But beyond that, I would also say that there is a historical and economic and much larger political element in connecting with the Central Asian and West Asian worlds.
In terms of connectivity, Ambassador Mukhopadhyay, since you've served there also, if you could just slightly elaborate a bit vis-a-vis the proximity to Iranian border and the way, in fact, India is giving massive push to some of their projects, infrastructure projects, particularly roadways.
Yes, the Zaran Dilaram project, I think it's often not realized, was a very, very was a really major achievement of India. Because remember, this road was constructed when the Taliban were in fact, returning and rising in power in Nimroz province in Afghanistan, which is very close to Helmand. And since then, Afghanistan, as you know, is a landlocked country, and most of its communications and its infrastructure was linked through Pakistan. Now, over the last few years, we have seen a number of other alternatives develop. The Zarang Dilaram road eventually would connect to the Chabahar port. And there's already trade going through it, but there are plans to upgrade the infrastructure linking the Afghan border with Chabahar as well. In more recent years, we've had the Tapi gas pipeline has been talked about for a long time, and there has been some progress in it. There has been the Lapis Lazuli route, which is another route that has been created as an outlet for Afghanistan through Turkmenistan and eventually towards Europe. And then, of course, its connectivity with Central Asia has also improved, and with Iran has also improved through Herat in more recent years, including some train connectivity. So overall, Afghanistan is not as isolated or confined as it used to be. And Afghanistan is also a place with immense sort of mineral riches, which cannot be exploited so long, not have a kind of evacuation route.
Yes.
So all these things are adding up to Afghanistan's capacity to stand on its own feet economically.
Absolutely.
Afghanistan is highly dependent on the West, particularly for for its budget and for its day-to-day functioning, particularly for its security forces.
Yes, in
and
fact,
all these are really geared towards helping Afghanistan stand on its own feet.
Yes. And we're helping them. We're assisting them, not really helping them, but really assisting them. You talked about mining. In fact, many of their nationals, in fact, are being trained here, Afghan nationals, in various mining schools, particularly in Dhanbad. Talking about the larger picture, sir, big picture vis-a-vis China, vis-a-vis our immediate neighbor, and vis-a-vis the relationship emerging between Biden administration and Afghanistan. Is there a new template that we are looking at?
Well, this is very interesting. In some ways, it was predictable that a new democratic administration in the United States would review, I think, a very one-sided agreement with the Taliban that was executed, or that was agreed to during President Trump's time. The Democratic Party, particularly with its own brush with right-wing authoritarianism very recently in the US, is going to be far more committed to democracy in Afghanistan. It has always been, very strongly supportive of women's rights in Afghanistan. The China factor is another factor. China is a relatively new player, and I would say that China is at this point of time piggybacking on Pakistan to enter Afghanistan, and that is not a very good horse to ride in Afghanistan at this moment, given the fact that Pakistan is identified by most Afghans as the source of its problems and its violence, and terrorism. So I'm not sure. So the Biden administration has been so far cautious. It hasn't pronounced a full-fledged, well-thought-out policy, but early indications are that they would look for greater room for much stronger political engagement with the Afghan, polity, but also for a review, which has always been, President-elect Biden's stance on a stronger counterterrorism or CT component to the US-Taliban agreement. And in fact, the CT component, which was one of the two key elements of the US-Taliban agreement, is in fact really quite weak and entirely dependent on assurances from the Taliban with very little verification. So I think we will see, both from the security establishment in the United States, a push for a more balanced, review of the deal, which would also be more committed towards democracy, women's rights, and other concerns in Afghanistan.
Is this going to irk some neighbors, the further consolidation of ties between Afghanistan and India, as well as United States of America, considering that India, US and Afghanistan have common friends and common enemies as well?
Right. Thank you. The fact is that those countries that view India-Afghanistan relations in terms of zero-sum relations will see this as a setback. But, in politics, these things come up and, go up and down. The fact is that, we have based our friendship with Afghanistan on cooperation and on economic cooperation as well as political values. And these go down, and there is a whole cultural dimension to it that is, very ancient and historical. So I think the basis of whereas the country that you are speaking of, and I think you are referring to Pakistan, has basically looked at Pakistan in terms of how Afghanistan in terms of how it could dominate and subjugate it for its strategic depth, and more or less, dictate its relationships with other countries. Now, Afghans have a special place for India in their hearts, and no matter what Pakistan does, that special place will get stronger and stronger, not weaker. And I think the kind of commitment that we have shown, even at a time of transition and possible change in Afghanistan, to the people of Afghanistan will not be lost, both in terms of the COVID vaccines that we have very recently gifted to, but also in terms of this major, infrastructure commitment on the Shatut Dam.
Absolutely.
These will be very well received at a time when Afghanistan feels a little uncertain about the support from many of the other, wealthier countries in the world. Of course, there seems to be a correction to that, but India has been consistent in its support for the Afghan people.
Absolutely, yes. And considering Shatut Dam will actually end up in availability of fresh, clean drinking water to at least 1 million Afghan citizens there in Afghanistan. Thank you so much, Ambassador Mukhopadhyay, for joining us on this edition of World Today. Thank you. Let's continue on World Today and talk about Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Remember, he held a telephonic conversation with the President of United States of America, Joseph R. Biden. Prime Minister warmly congratulated President Biden, conveyed best wishes for his tenure and also looked forward to working closely with him to further elevate the India-US strategic partnership. The two leaders have discussed at length regional developments and the wider geopolitical context. They noted that the India-US partnership is firmly anchored in a shared commitment to democratic values and common strategic interests between the two countries. They reiterated the importance of working with like-minded countries to ensure a rule-based international order and a free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific region. Prime Minister and President Biden affirmed the importance of addressing the challenge of global climate change. Prime Minister welcomed President Biden's decision to recommit to the Paris Agreement and highlighted the ambitious targets India has set for itself in the area of renewable energy. Prime Minister welcomed President Biden's initiative to organize the Climate Leaders Summit in April this year and looked forward to participating in the same. Prime Minister took the opportunity to invite President Biden and Dr. Jill Biden to visit India at their earliest convenience. And now let's take a look at the update on COVID-19 numbers coming across the world. And here are the numbers for you. More than 10 crore 70 lakh people worldwide have contracted COVID-19 virus, while over 7 crore 89 lakh recoveries have been recorded so far. The number of fatalities from COVID-19 globally stand about 23 lakh 33,000. The US continues to remain the worst affected country from the disease, recording over 2 crore 70 lakh cases and over 4 lakh 76,000 deaths reported only in United States alone. The other big story on the world today, a team of investigators working on behalf of the World Health Organization held a news conference in Wuhan after the team finished its visits to hospitals, research facilities and the seafood market where the first outbreak was identified. They say that the team did not find evidence of large outbreaks that could be related to COVID-19 prior to December 2019. Now, World Health Organization's Ben Embarek says recent Wuhan investigations has uncovered new information but has not dramatically changed the picture of COVID-19 outbreak. And my colleague Anshuman, in fact, is joining us to give us more perspective, joining us from Wuhan. He's joining us all the way from Wuhan, my senior colleague Anshuman Mishra. Anshuman, good evening to you. First of all, a quick roundup of the findings by this expert team that is currently in Wuhan, the WHO team.
Satan, the main questions surrounding the visit were like what may be the pathways, the possible ways for introduction of the coronavirus to the human beings. And the WHO team, as mentioned in the press briefing, they said that they tried to explore 4 possible pathways. One was it was transferred directly from the animals to humans. The other was from animals to animal to an intermediary host, and then to the human. Third one is the what China has been saying, that from frozen food to the human beings. And the last one is the lab leaks, one of the alternate theories which have been propagated by various parts in the international community and was part of the bickering between China and other Western countries led by US and Australia. But out of these 4 possibilities, the WHO team said the second one, which says that it might have come from an animal, the reservoir, through an intermediate species to the animals. But for this also, they said that we are still to do some more research, some more studies to find out which is the intermediate species. And based on the data which have been provided to them by the Chinese scientists and the team in Wuhan, they said that the connection goes back to some rural areas in China where some animals would have been infected by some bats which were carrying the coronavirus. So still it's not very much clear, but it is the most likely path of transmission to the human beings. And the second most important question, whether there was a lab leak. So WHO team said that the lab leak is quite unlikely because there have not been any samples of such coronavirus across the labs. And they also said that we will not recommend this hypothesis to be taken further. Sakal.
They're calling it hypothetical, Anshuman. That's bizarre, isn't it? You've been there, you've seen the extent of or the intensity of the outbreak, and we do know that China has been at an absolute criticism end of the world. This is a joint study group. Now, the findings, do you think are, do you see there is an attempt to downplay? For example, the WHO group says there are no findings to suggest that there have been massive, large outbreaks that could be related to COVID-19. Isn't that strange?
Sakal, actually, WHO team today said that there were clusters of infection in Wuhan, but the reports which suggest that these might have been originated outside Wuhan and at other places also. But that also has not been confirmed by the WHO team, as they said that we still need some more time to study, and we will put all these details in their final research paper. Also, one thing which is important that they have worked on all the data which have been provided by the Chinese officials and Chinese scientists. On which they have worked for initial 2 weeks when they landed in Wuhan under quarantine. So the critics might say that what kind of data they have been provided. Absolutely. And how much access they have been provided. So all these questions are still open. Maybe when the team goes back and they look back at all these data points, they might come up with something on these lines.
Anshuman, you're joining us live from Wuhan. What's the sense that you are getting? Are there going to be some eyebrows raised at the end of their visit about the findings, like you mentioned about the critics, the collation of data, the methodology that was employed by both groups, the joint group, Chinese as well as WHO, to carry out these studies?
Sakal, the whole entire visit, you see, if you go back, you trace down to last year in May, when the World Health Assembly first initiated the idea, the proposal to start an investigation. Since then, there have been some visits to prepare the groundwork, and also there have been propagation of alternative theories by Chinese media as well as some officials that it might have come from some other parts of the world. Then you have seen the delay in the approval of the visit of the team to China, especially in January 2021 when they were about to leave for Wuhan and they were not given the permission to start. So all these things clearly raised the issues around the visit, and they raised expectations also, and they raised some questions also. But if you see the statement by the WHO scientists when they started their field visit after the quarantine, they said that they have been getting getting full cooperation by Chinese side, okay. And they have been getting the access to the lab, and they met the staff and people, barring the question that what kind of data they have been shown. I mean, that's a different thing. But they were given full cooperation by the Chinese side, and so that's why we can say that we still need to wait for the final report of WHO team. But if I talk about today's press conference, it was like initially it was full of confusion. There was some invitation by WHO about the press conference, but there was some confusion from the foreign ministry side, and later it was some confusion about the timings, and finally started 1 hour later. So and all the journalists were also not allowed to attend the press conference in person because of the lack of the space, and all those things are there.
Okay.
So yeah. So but as you can see from other reports also that journalists were there, but it was obviously tightly monitored visit, okay. And highly secured visit and the press conference.
Yes, yes, that's something. Yes, highly secured press conference also. Well, I think that is something, Anshuman, that says it all. That says it all. As of now, thank you very much, Anshuman Mishra, for joining us from Wuhan. Well, that was an exclusive bit on that so-called press conference that was held by the joint study team of China and WHO officials. And now let's move on and talk about Biden's administration. U.S. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris took a virtual tour of Arizona's only 24/7 vaccination site at State Farm Stadium. The tour was led by Arizona's Director of Health Services, Dr. Cara Christ. She showed Biden and Harris the command tent as well as the vaccination pod and other areas of the site. State Farm Stadium is the home of the Arizona Cardinals. It has been running non-stop since January 12th and has administered more than 100,000 doses of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine.
When we started to try to figure out what we were going to do when we came into office, because there wasn't much of a transition, we didn't have, we weren't given a lot of information. And some of the information we had turned out not to be accurate in terms of vaccine supplies, and we met virtually with all the governors. And the governors basically said, just send us the vaccine, we'll take care of it. And the fact is, I think they underestimated the logistical needs that go with having the vaccine, assuming you have enough vaccine. Red state or a blue state when it comes to COVID. There's no such thing as Democrat or Republican when it comes to COVID. When we stand united, there's not a damn thing we've been unable to do, and you're the perfect example of that. So thanks again. Stay safe. Stay safe.
Together with Governor Ducey, Senator Sinema and Kelly and so many others, I think we're showing how when we are unified, we can get a lot of good work done.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador gave his first news conference on Monday following COVID-19 infection. He had announced testing positive on January 24th, and officials in recent days said he was virtually free of symptoms. During the news conference, López Obrador said he was not going to make the use of face masks obligatory. That's strange. He added he expects the economy to grow 5% this year as the country recovers from the heavy hit it suffered from the coronavirus crisis. From Mexico, moving on to France, where French hospital workers near Paris on Monday got their first AstraZeneca COVID-19 jabs, even as its efficacy against the virus variants is uncertain. French Health Minister Olivier Véran says that he continues to support the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, arguing it provided sufficient protection against nearly all the variants of the virus. Véran was shown on French television receiving AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine at a vaccination facility in the city of Melun in Paris region. Meanwhile, British Junior Health Minister said on Monday there was no evidence that the AstraZeneca vaccine did not prevent death or serious illness, and added South Africa had only imposed a temporary halt on using the vaccine. Bar owners in Turkish capital Ankara opened their places on Monday evening for the first time in 11 months, not for the business but a plea to government. Owners and employees of more than 100 bars staged a protest with drums to tell the Turkish government they're going broke. Record COVID-19 infections and deaths have led to curfews and shorter business hours. This has hit Turkey's large hospitality sector and many others struggling with double-digit inflation and raising fears of a winter recession. Restaurants, cafes, hairdressers and shopping malls only operate from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. locally, and for dining, only takeaway and delivery services are allowed. Bars and nightclubs are the only businesses to remain closed for the past 11 months.
We don't want to be discriminated. I mean, we support all the attempts to overcome this pandemic. But why only us? Why only us? Shut the country down for 15 days, as in New Zealand, as in Australia, as in many other countries. I don't think that there will be any positive outcome from this, whatever we did today. But I mean, if people remember us, if people remember our existence, that's a plus. Because I mean, it is really hard to tell how much we've been suffering over this period.
Hong Kong's top court denied bail on Tuesday to media tycoon and Beijing critic Jimmy Lai. He's the most high-profile person to be charged under the city's national security law. Lai had been in custody since December 3rd, except for he was released on bail for about a week later last year. He was granted $10 million that is $1.3 million bail by a lower court on December 23rd, only for the Court of Final Appeal to bring him back into custody on December 31st for another hearing. His return to custody was related to Article 42 of the Security Law, which says that no bail shall be granted to a criminal suspect or defendant unless the judge has sufficient grounds for believing that the criminal suspect or defendant will not continue to commit acts endangering national security. On Tuesday, the court said the lower court applied on erroneous lines of reasoning and misconstrued Article 42. Lai was arrested in August when about 200 police officers raided the newsroom of his Apple Daily tabloid newspaper. Beijing imposed the sweeping national security law on the former British colony in June 2020 after months of pro-democracy protests. The law punishes anything China considers subversion, secession, terrorism, or collusion with foreign forces, with up to life in prison.
Hong Kong's most high-profile activist to have been arrested under the national security law, the media tycoon Jimmy Lai, is back behind bars again after the city's top court, the Court of Final Appeal here behind me, ruled against a decision that had previously been made to grant him bail. That decision itself had already been overturned after the city's Department of Justice appealed against it and successfully rescinded that granting of bail. The decision today from the Court of Final Appeal is being seen as significant because it has now formally said that the High Court, in granting bail to Mr. Lai back in December, acted in error and misunderstood the exact terminology of what's required under the controversial national security law that was introduced into the city here in Hong Kong by Beijing back in June last year. The reason that this is being seen as significant, say legal experts, is because of the complexity that the judiciary faces here of trying to find a way to mesh that national security legislation with the traditional common law system that is adopted in Hong Kong's legal system. That's been a source of great concern ever since the national security legislation was introduced in June, how to make this legislation fit with the city's common law traditions. Democracy supporters and those that came to support Mr. Lai in court today say that today's decision is a blow because they see that now there's a very little chance of suspects arrested under the security law ever being granted bail in the future. Mr. Lai's team has been given permission to appeal again and put in another application for bail, and it says it will do so, but the expectation among his supporters is that the chances of that having success are pretty low based on the decision from the Court of Final Appeal today. In the meantime, Mr. Lai's formal court case for his charges of colluding with foreign forces under the national security law is due to start in April, and until then he will remain in police custody.
Well, that was our DD India colleague getting us the ground report from Hong Kong. Now from Hong Kong, let's shift focus to what's happening in Myanmar. There's a group of saffron-robed monks marched in the vanguard of protests with workers and students in Yangon. They flew multicolored Buddhist flags alongside red banners in the color of elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy. The protests are the biggest since the Saffron Revolution led by monks in 2007, which led over subsequent years to the military's gradual withdrawal from politics after decades of direct rule. And as Myanmar continues to explode, United States State Department spokesman Ned Price says that the U.S. stands with the people of Myanmar and that U.S. supports their right to assemble peacefully amid mass demonstrations against a military coup in the country. He further adds that the U.S. is concerned about an order by Myanmar's military rulers restricting public gatherings and was moving quickly to form its response to the military takeover.
Elected representatives of the people of Burma in their efforts to speak for the people of the country. We join them in demanding the immediate and full restoration of the democratically elected government. We stand with the people of Burma, support their right to assemble peacefully, including to protest peacefully in support of the democratically elected government, and the right to freedom of expression, including the freedom to seek, to receive, to impart information both online and offline. We're, of course, very concerned about the military's recent announcement restricting public gatherings. As I said before, we strongly support the right of all individuals in Burma and around the world.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump's impeachment trial begins today, making Trump the first U.S. president in the history of America to be impeached twice. The trial is an unusual one. It not just makes him the first president in U.S. history to be impeached twice by the lower chamber of Congress, but he is also the first president in the U.S. history to face his Senate trial after leaving office. The House of Representatives last month voted to pass an article of impeachment that accused him of incitement of insurrection. The trial will begin the charges that the 45th U.S. president incited his supporters to raid Capitol Hill last month. UN rights experts urge 57 states to repatriate nearly 10,000 of their citizens, mostly women and children, associated with Islamic State fighters held in camps in northeast Syria in subhuman conditions without legal process. Under international law, these states have a duty to repatriate their citizens, and if there is evidence, to prosecute adults for war crimes or other offences at their trials in their domestic courts. Some 9,462 foreign women and children are among more than 64,600 people detained at Al-Hol and Roj camps, which are run by Syrian Kurdish authorities, where the majority of residents are Iraqi and Syrian nationals. The United Nations had said last month it had received reports of 12 Syrian and Iraqi nationals being murdered in the first half of January at Al-Hol camps, which hold internal refugees and families of Islamic State fighters. From Syria, moving on to Argentina. In Buenos Aires, thousands of Argentines took to the streets of the capital on Monday in a protest against the government of President Alberto Fernandez. The protesters, who are demanding jobs and better pay, marched on the economy ministry, waving flags and chanting anti-government slogans. Protesters say that they are marching with the slogan that poverty and inflation are the pandemic, as a way to make visible the serious situation that the large part of the people are going through. Latin America's third largest economy was in the deep crisis already before the pandemic hit. Now, the health crisis is now expected to shrink around 12% this year, driving millions into poverty and leaving almost 6 out of every 10 children and adolescents below the poverty line. A fire broke out on Monday at a building in Berlin that houses nearly many people arriving as asylum seekers. The incident left many people injured, and though it was not clear what had caused the fire at that asylum in the German capital southwestern Fredenow district. The Berlin Fire Department informed on Twitter that 75 fighters had been sent to the scene to manage the situation. And now we get you stories that make news, but the noteworthy headlines. Basically, these are the stories that go beyond headlines.
With the Lunar New Year just 2 days ahead, South Koreans are cancelling trips to their hometowns for the holiday. Although they cannot visit their hometowns due to the pandemic, these people have found ways to express their love to their family and celebrate the Lunar New Year's Day together. Dressed in the traditional outfit hanbok, they are sending video greetings to parents far away. Local shops and bank representatives participated in the trial run for Macau's new integrated payment system, Simple Pay. Authorities said the second phase of the scheme will be launched in March if the first phase is carried out successfully. With the integrated service Simple Pay, introduced by the Monetary Authority of Macau, consumers will be able to scan any local QR code of various e-payment tools to pay the relevant shop. With COVID guidelines banning large audiences, some Kenyan performers have taken to the streets to earn a living. One group, the Clan Acrobats, entertain motorists stuck in traffic with juggling, balancing and tumbling. Tourists brave freezing temperatures in Omicron, which is the coldest village on Earth. Siberian Yakutia attracts tourists all over the world despite and thanks to the extremely low winter temperatures there. A tourist was seen braving freezing conditions in Omicron, the coldest settlements in the world, as he took an icy dip into the river while air temperature stood at -50 degrees Celsius. Conjoined Yemeni twins Mohammed and Ahmad took off on a UNICEF plane to undergo a life-saving separation surgery in Amman in Jordan. The surgery is crucial to save the lives of the conjoined newborns. They're among a group of people dubbed Manusia Silva or Silver people who use the strategy to draw attention while struggling to make ends meet after the coronavirus pushed Indonesia's economy into recession last year. Their bodies gleamed in silver paint, appealing to passers-by for an occasional coin at a busy intersection outside the capital, Jakarta. The Lunar New Year period is usually the busiest time of the year for tour operators in Australia, but in 2021, with borders closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic and still recovering from the 2020 bushfires, the normally bustling cableway, the world's steepest railway, and glass-floored skyway carriages were seen almost empty. Sydney welcomed the Lunar New Year of the Ox a few days early, kicking off 2 weeks of festivities and celebration throughout the city. Sydney's Lunar New Year festival attracted nearly 1.5 million visitors in 2019 and is one of the largest Lunar New Year celebrations in the world. However, COVID-19 restrictions have since reduced crowd numbers. During the normal Lunar New Year celebrations, Malaysia's leading line dance troupe put on a gravity-defying spectacle by leaping in full costume between poles to the beat of drums and crashing of cymbals and gongs. But this year, the world's top line dance troupes have been grounded due to the coronavirus pandemic in Malaysia. The group had previously lobbied the United Nations Cultural Agency UNESCO to recognize its homegrown line dance technique, which sees its members perform on tall poles in a gravity-defying spectacle. Hundreds of holidaymakers enjoyed winter sports on frozen waters on Arakol Glacier Lake in Kyrgyzstan. The picturesque lake, situated some 3,500 meters above the sea level, has lately become a major tourist attraction as more people from across the country come to skate and sledge on its ice. 106-year-old pianist Colette Maze's delicate fingers leaped back and forth on the black and white keys of her piano. Although French cultural venues have now been closed since months due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but that didn't deter Maze to record her 6th album, slated to be released in April. Live music from a violin and bass wafts from a New York City street corner, drawing passers-by on a cold February day. With an empty storefront as a stage, musicians are working their magic again, amplified by sound systems outdoors. Over 100 chamber musicians to Broadway stars will perform 60 shows through mid-March, funded through the Alpha-Dine Foundation, which employs artists whose live gigs have been cancelled due to the pandemic. Bureau Report, DD India.
And after Beyond Headlines, let's get you some quick fire news updates from India. First up, Uttarakhand Rescue operations are underway to free people trapped inside a tunnel in Tapovan in India's Uttarakhand state after a glacier broke off in Uttarakhand's Chamoli district on Sunday, triggering an avalanche. Now, according to the authorities, the combined team, including NDRF, SDRF, ITBP, Army and local police personnel, are busy cleaning the 180 meters long tunnel. The authorities have said that around 70 to 80% of the tunnel has already been cleaned in the day-night operations being run since 48 hours, and around 38 to 41 people might be still stuck in the tunnel. Union Home Minister Amit Shah made a statement in Lok Sabha on the disaster in Uttarakhand. He said, according to the latest data provided by the state government, 20 people have lost their lives and several persons are missing. Addressing a public rally in Birbhum district of West Bengal, President BJP President JP Nadda said the state, which was known for the culture, development and for showing direction to the country, has been exploited through corruption by Mamata Banerjee's government. So BJP decides to start Parivartan Yatra or Parivartan Yatra to bring in the real change. From West Bengal to Bihar. In Bihar, the Nitish Kumar-led NDA cabinet underwent its expansion today. Total of 17 ministers were sworn in the cabinet, among which 9 are from the BJP, 8 from the JDU. Speaking in Rajya Sabha on retirement of members of the parliament, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said it would be difficult to replace Ghulam Nabi Azad, the veteran opposition leader from the Congress in the House, as he has set very high standards as MP and opposition leader. Arrest was made by Delhi Police's Special Cell unit for Sidhu's alleged involvement in hosting the flag at Red Fort on Republic Day and rioting. Union Home Minister Amit Shah slammed senior Congress leader Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary in Lok Sabha over latter's claim that he violated the dignity of Shanti Niketan by sitting on the chair of poet Rabindranath Tagore during his visit to West Bengal. Referring to a letter by Vice Chancellor of Shanti Niketan, Amit Shah clarified that there was no violation by him during his visit to the place, as he did not sit on the chair but on a window. Shah took also a dig at Congress party misleading the House. And before we wrap up, let's also take a look why this day is significant.
On 8 February 1893, Giuseppe Verdi's last opera, Falstaff, has its first performance. He was an Italian opera composer who developed a musical education with the help of a local patron. In the year 1971, on this day, the Apollo spacecraft returned to Earth after mankind's third landing on the Moon. On the same day, in year 1996, a huge Irish Republican Army bomb exploded in London's Docklands, which killed 2 and injured 100. The blast marked the end of a 17-month IRA ceasefire. Georgian President Edward Shevardnadze survived an assassination attempt by supporters of a former president in the year 1998 on the same day. The arrest of some of his attackers provoked violence and led to Russian cooperation in the arrest and extradition of an individual alleged to have conspired in planning the attack. In the year 2001, a surfacing U.S. nuclear submarine, the USS Grenville, struck and sank a Japanese fishing trawler off Hawaii. The incident killed 9 of 35 of the people on board. On the same day in 2002, Britain's Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, died due to heartbreak at the age of 71. She struggled throughout her life to balance an independent spirit and artistic temperament with her duties as a member of Britain's royal family. In the year 2003, on 8 February, weeks before US-led forces invaded Iraq, Pope John Paul made an appeal for world prayer to avert the war. Later, the Pope also sent a top cardinal on a peace mission to Baghdad.
And before we end this edition of World Today, let's have an insight into the image of the day. Take a look at this. Namaskar, and this is a goodbye from me and my entire team of World Today. Remember, don't forget to tune in to DD India tomorrow, same time, for your window to the world, World Today.